Okay, here we go. This is maybe my ninth, 10th, 11th time trying to make this a particular episode of Law Enforcement and Me. So please forgive me if I sound a little weary, but I am Miss Carmen and I am the host of your favorite civilian crime talk show called Law Enforcement and Me, Ellie and Me. This is the place where me as a citizen, not in law enforcement, not anything affiliated with law enforcement, wants to get to know law enforcement and understand the relationship between law enforcement and the officers that patrol, the officers that enforce the laws, and every now and again, maybe even a judge. Um, Today is Tuesday, October 14th. Um, Coming off of a crazy whirlwind weekend, some things went on in my life that I'm still trying to get rested from. We lost a couple of people since the last time I tried to record this, a couple of major celebrities. One just today, as a matter of fact. But today is actually the birthday of George Floyd. And in my previous episode, I have mentioned George Floyd's name. And I think the biggest reason why I really want to take the time to acknowledge him today is because he was a citizen. He had his problems. We all have our problems. Life be lifing. And he just ran into a situation that really George should still be with us. As I'm talking about this today, George should still be with us. But unfortunately, he died at the hands of a rogue police officer who felt as though that he had the power. He was on a power trip. He was incredibly racist. He was actually supposed to be training some of the individuals that were also there with him on that date that George died. But I'm going to look beyond that. And the other police officers that were involved, a couple of them were not, they had no idea that what they were witnessing was something that was totally illegal. So I'm not going to blame any of them. I'm only going to blame the individual who put his knee on George Floyd's neck and called it a day. So, with that being said, I'm going to get into today's episode. Tim and I are working some things out because he's got a fantastic contact that I'm hoping to bring on to this platform. But unfortunately, I can't mention him. I can't name names because if it falls flat, I'm not going to look good. And even though you can't see me, trust me, I want to look good in the podcast. Um, I also want to just get into a few things about the my favorite show ever, On Patrol Live. Dan Abrams last week opened up his own restaurant in New York, so I'm waiting for the On Patrol Live museum to go along with that. I'm also going to be pushing and pushing and pushing for the On Patrol West broadcast because we all know that for some reason at 12 o'clock Eastern time on a Friday or Saturday night, that's just when things are getting good. And then all of a sudden the broadcast stops and we're waiting sometimes a week to find out what happened when the cameras shut down and we went into the On Patrol Live rebroadcast. Anyway, so with that in mind, last week, in the text exchange between myself and Tim Santoro, you guys know I always talk about my friend Tim Santoro, Las Vegas, Nevada, huge proponent of law enforcement. He is law enforcement educated. He's a former police officer himself. He's gone through basically a lot of the training that's involved in becoming a law enforcement officer. And his current role, he has his own company called Tactable Security Solutions. Like I said, it's out there in Las Vegas. You can always look him up. But he also has YouTube videos where he talks about different things, such as things that even I have to deal with at work, to keep ourselves secure and to make sure that we are aware of our surroundings just in a day by day thing. So I want to definitely shout out Tim on that. He's always been an advocate for what I'm trying to do on this broadcast. But in our text exchange, I was telling him how I was watching a YouTube video where we were watching the oath of the Swiss Guard of the Vatican. And I was just so enamored at what I was seeing that Tim gave me the brilliant idea of, you know what, since I'm such a history buff, I'm such a person of history and I love history so much. Maybe what I should do is look into the history of law enforcement and security at the Vatican. And it just became so brilliant to me. So, usually, what I do with this is I do this thing called raw and unscripted. But today, this is going to be scripted. The reason why it's going to be scripted today is because not only do I have a lot of information to go over about what happens at the Vatican and about what incurs when you do see the Vatican on your television screen on YouTube or anything like that, so that you can fully understand what it is that they go through. That being said, what I'm about to do, it's twofold here. I'm going to give you this education, but what I'm also going to do is give you what I call a voiceover script. One of my dreams in life is to become a voiceover artist. So, with that being said, I'm going to dig into the history and what exactly goes into being part of law enforcement for the Vatican. So, bear with me. If I flub, I'm apologizing ahead of time. So, did you know the Vatican, the smallest country in the world, has not one but two separate security forces? Yes, behind the walls of the Holy See is a system as intricate as any modern nation's, complete with detectives, soldiers, intelligence units, and yes, even a jail cell. It's easy to think of the Vatican as all ceremony and serenity, but beneath the marble and the music is an operation that functions 24/7 to protect not just the head of state, but a spiritual symbol recognized throughout the planet. Let's start with the lesser known side of his holy partnership. The Vatican Police Department, officially called the Gendarmerie Corps of Vatican City State. These are the men and women who handle everything from criminal investigations and counterterrorism to crowd management and digital security. Think of them as part Interpol, part Secret Service, part Neighborhood Watch, all packed into 108 acres of sacred territory. Their workday might begin with something as simple as directing foot traffic in St. Peter's Square. But before the day is done, they could be liaisoning with Italian intelligence or Europol, responding to security alerts that reach far beyond Rome. Most recruits come from Italy's elite forces, the Carabinieri, or the Italian state police, bringing with them years of real world experience. But once they join the Vatican's Gendarmerie, the training goes to another level. Recruits enter what's often described as a silent boot camp, an intense, months long program that tests not only their physical ability, but also their emotional control and diplomatic composure. Because here's the thing, Vatican policing isn't about brute force, it's about balance. They're operating in a place where tourists, pilgrims, heads of state, and the Pope himself all share the same space. This training includes Vatican and international law. They must understand how faith and legal jurisdiction overlap. Tactical firearms and response, with drills conducted inside closed Vatican courtyards. Counterterrorism and intelligence analysis, often trained side by side with Italian anti mafia and anti terror units. Cyber defense, because the Vatican has been a target for hackers and digital espionage. VIP and papal protection, learning everything from motorcade strategy to psychological reading of crowds. And crisis negotiation and language training, because communication can be the best form of protection. Their instructors often include experts from Interpol, the Italian Air Force, and even the Vatican Diplomatic Corps. One former commander described the Gendarmerie as a bridge between heaven and earth, but with body armor. Believe it or not, they even incorporate a tiny detention facility inside Vatican City. So, yes, you can technically be arrested and booked in the world's holiest square mile. So now I'm going to turn to the colorful half of this divine duo, the Pontifical Swiss Guard. You've seen them, red, blue, and yellow Renaissance uniforms that look straight out of a Raphael painting. You know, Raphael was a painter who once was a rival of Michelangelo. But behind the style of this Renaissance is a 500-year discipline. The Swiss Guard was founded in 1506. It is the world's oldest standing military unit. They were first hired by Pope Julius II, who wanted soldiers loyal only to the papacy, men of courage, faith, and absolute discretion. To qualify for the Swiss Guard, you must be, of course, a male, a Swiss citizen, Catholic, unmarried, between the ages of 19 and 30, at least 5 feet 8 inches tall, and most importantly, deeply committed to serving the church. Before even stepping into the Vatican, every recruit completes Switzerland's mandatory military service. They are known for their precision and toughness. Then, once in Rome, the fundamental transformation begins. They train in close quarters combat, both with modern firearms and traditional halberds. You know, the halberds are those long medieval pole weapons. They include anti-assassination tactics, including defense formations and rapid extraction drills, marksmanship and advanced weaponry, emergency medical response and crisis evacuation, papal travel coordination, ensuring security during visits to countries throughout the globe. During training, they live in the barracks behind the Apostolic Palace, where every corridor echoes with centuries of duty. The daily discipline is rigorous: drills at dawn, briefings by midday, and standing guard for hours at a time in both silence and tremendous heat. When they swear their oath of allegiance to the Pope, they raise 3 fingers to symbolize the Holy Trinity. They're not reciting words, they are pledging their lives. Now, for me, here's where things get fascinating. These two forces, the Gendarmerie and the Swiss Guard, work together constantly. During massive public events like Easter Mass, Christmas Eve, or papal audiences, the coordination is extraordinary. The Gendarmerie handles crowd control, surveillance, and outer perimeters. The Swiss Guard protects the Pope's physical space, tracking his every movement and any potential threat. When the Pope travels, it's a ballet of security. The Swiss Guard forms the close protective circle, while at the same time, the Gendarmerie coordinates the Interpol, local law enforcement, and airport security to monitor every route and every name on any guest list. This duo works in faith-driven professionalism, one rooted in 16th century loyalty, the other in 21st century intelligence. But nothing tested this partnership more than May 13th, 1981. That's the day Pope John Paul II was shot in St. Peter's Square by a Turkish gentleman named Mehmet Ali Aga. The attack stunned the world and forever changed Vatican security. In the years that followed, the Swiss Guard modernized its weapons and response strategy. They created new rapid response units, expanded firearms training, and introduced psychological readiness drills to help guards stay calm under extreme pressure. The Gendarmerie, meanwhile, restructured entirely, forming intelligence divisions, adding anti-terror and cyber defense units, and integrating communication lines directly with Italian and European agencies. Out of tragedy came transformation. The Pope survived, so did the Vatican's faith in preparedness. Today, the operation between these two forces seems seamless. All of that being said, there was so much of that I went into, and I dug really deeply, but I have to remember that I'm only available for 30 minutes at a time right now until I can get this podcast on a better platform, so forgive me. But I found this to be so fascinating. So since I started doing this research, I started looking more and more at not just the masses that are shown on YouTube and shown on Catholic television, but I'm looking at everything that happens behind the scenes. So everyone else is looking at the Pope, they're praying, they're doing communion, the Pope is doing his sermon, but I'm also looking intricately at every movement that goes on around him. So it's not just the Pope, it's not just the cardinals, it's not just the bishops, it's the Swiss Guard, and it's the Gendarmerie. And that was just so great. I'm elated that I did this and I was able to share that with you guys. So let me pull back a little bit, come back to real life because I got deep into it. I hope that my reciting the script was okay for you, and I hope that the message that I was trying to get was, I hope you understood what I was trying to get to, because I really was excited to share that with you guys. So that being said, I'm going to close my portion, and I'm going to close my portion and let you know that because Tim and I have crazy schedules and we never seem to be able to come together to get this podcast done on the host, co-host, and platform that we have, because he's definitely my right hand when it comes to making sure that I do this right. So since our schedules can't seem to get together, he does have an editorial that he wants to add on to this. So I'm going to plug that in. In the meantime, I'm still working on getting some guests. I want to incorporate a bunch of other things that work in conjunction with law enforcement. And I am talking about things like what Tim does, security solutions. I might even get into some things with regard to law enforcement and sports, because when you watch NFL games and when you watch the NBA and baseball games, you'd be surprised at what you're looking at, not just watching the teams play, but how law enforcement plays a major, major role in what you're looking at and making sure that everything that you see moves cohesively without incident. And I'm actually finally beginning to have fun with this. So guys, thank you so much for your support. I am exhausted after my 11th attempt at getting this done, at getting the voiceover portion done. Excuse all of my flubs, but I'm so excited that you guys sat back, listened, and learned something really great. So I'm going to close my portion with a huge thank you. Please take care of each other. We are living in some serious volatile times. Take care of each other. Take care of yourselves. Stay prayed up. Thank God for everything. And thank you guys for listening to Law Enforcement and Me. This is Miss Carmen. I am out.
Hey everybody, this is Tim Santoro. Unfortunately, Carmen and I were not able to sync schedules again to do a recording, so wanted to come in and add on this commentary to her latest episode, and also been very busy trying to go ahead and book a new guest who is actually a very prominent law enforcement officer. He's quite well known out there, so won't give any names yet because we're still currently negotiating with him and getting some things worked out, but we look forward to having him on the show soon. He's very excited to be part of this and bring you all some great content. But what I wanted to do is touch on something that I feel is an important topic that, since Carmen and I were recently discussing some things that she saw with police forces in Italy, especially in Vatican City, and what different logos and colors meant, I thought I wanted to speak a little bit about on that, something that is very prominent in this country, to which many of you may know about, which is the thin blue line, or the blue line, or blue line flag, which is a symbol for support for law enforcement. Unfortunately, it's become kind of a negative thing lately, with a lot of the uprises in 2020 with the protests and all that, and a lot of people dispelling the blue line and kind of shunning it and feeling that it's something that's negative. But I wanted to go over the history a little bit and give an explanation to what this actually is, where it actually came from, and what the true meaning is, to hopefully dispel any rumors that's out there. So basically, it goes way back. The thin blue line actually predating that was the something called the Thin Red Line. So as some of you may know, the Thin Red Line usually designates firefighter support, but the Thin Red Line originally was referenced in 1854 and goes back to the Crimean War. So basically, it's in reference to the British soldiers who went out there and they stood the line during a significant battle in the Crimean War. And there was a painting made of this battle by a gentleman by the name of Robert Gibb in 1881. And in the painting, it depicts the British troops wearing their very famous, well-known bright red jackets, all standing in a line, because while it's not a tactically sound approach back in the day, that's basically how they used to fight wars. You all line up and aim your guns and, hope to God you're not the one who gets hit. But so it depicted that. So it is a line of British soldiers wearing their red coats, and that's where that term Thin Red Line came from. So that, like I said, that painting was by Mr. Robert Gibb in 1881. So the terms went on throughout the years. The first known mention of Thin Blue Line is a 1911 poem by a gentleman, and I apologize if I mispronounce this, Nels Dickman Anderson. He wrote a poem entitled The Thin Blue Line, which basically was a reference to the United States Army, who at the time actually wore blue dress uniforms prior to what they have now, but back then they had blue dress uniforms, so Thin Blue Line was about the U.S. military. The first kind of mention of that being with law enforcement goes back to 1922 and New York Police Commissioner Richard Enright, who did make mention of that. The term was widely popularized in the 1950s, and that's on behalf of LAPD Police Chief Bill Parker, who Parker often used the term Thin Blue Line in his speeches that he made to the public. So Public was a very prominent figure, so much so that they actually named the police headquarters in LA Parker Center. So Bill Parker would often use this term in his speeches about law enforcement to the public, and people started to ask him, what do you mean by Thin Blue Line? So Parker explained that the Thin Blue Line represented his men and women, his officers of the LAPD, who are very famous for their dark blue uniforms. And believe it or not, that color is actually unique to the LAPD in certain circles for companies who design uniforms and make uniforms. That color is literally known as LAPD blue or LAPD navy. So that color is unique to them. So the Thin Blue Line was his officers, and according to Parker, the Thin Blue Line represents the line between social order and peace and civil disobedience and anarchy. So his men and women were the line, were the barrier between peace and chaos and anarchy. The term got referenced in the English Oxford Dictionary and Sunday Times as recent as 1962 after that, and then it started to gain prominence in the mid to late 60s, made its way to the East Coast, being used in different agencies in Massachusetts and also by the NYPD. 1970 saw a big surge of it with police officer Joseph Wambaugh, who actually went on to be a very prominent author and wrote several police-themed books, and he used the term regularly in his novels in the 70s and 80s. And then there was the 1988 documentary film by filmmaker Errol Morris about the murder of Dallas police officer Robert W. Wood, and that was entitled The Thin Blue Line, 1988. The term since then has gone on to show kind of solidarity and identification of police officers, pride in the police officers and the services they do, flying the blue line flag or putting a blue line flag on a shirt or a patch on your tactical vest or a gear bag or whatnot. And also a way for the public to go ahead and express their gratitude and their appreciation for law enforcement. Unfortunately, towards the 2018, 2019, and into the 2020s, when we had all this civil uprisings and whatnot because of the things that happened in Minneapolis and related cities, the blue line kind of took on a negative image to many who thought that it was related to a code of silence or a wall of silence to where police officers would, protect themselves from wrongdoing or cover up wrongdoings, kind of designating a brotherhood or fostering an us against them mentality. I understand where those ideas come from, but unfortunately, like many things, it was a prideful idea that ended up getting skewed. And once that kind of skew gets out there and people designate it as a certain thing, you go ahead and you get that misunderstanding, and totally unrelatable. But if you look at that, also there's been a lot of different symbols in history that were not negative, but once they got associated with a negative party or people assigned a negative designation to that, it lost its original meaning. So my intent here was to go ahead and let everybody understand that this is what the thin blue line originally originated from, going back to the 1850s and the Crimean War, and the development in the early part of the century, and then up until Chief Parker designating it, as, like I said, it is the line between peace and chaos, and those men and women who wear that badge and wear that blue uniform are the line that protects the people like that. And there are other lines out there. There's the red line, which designates firefighters. There's, I believe it's the gray line for corrections officers. I've even seen there's yellow, there's green for military. So it's really turned into a wide thing. But unfortunately, with law enforcement, it's taken on kind of a negative image, which I think is very sad. So hopefully, by hearing this here, you can understand a little bit more about what it is and what it was intended to be, and dispel some of the rumors that are out there of what people feel that it means. But as always, just here to educate, and like Carmen always says, the intent of this is to bridge the gap between law enforcement and the general public, to just foster an understanding, because we're not ever going to prosper as a society until we can foster that understanding between the two parties. So thank you all for listening. Look forward to bringing you our special guest coming soon. And until next time, please stay safe.